speaking to the choir, sort of insider information. A lot of the people here, we've been dealing with these issues for years. We know the language, we know the issues, and it's sort of second nature to us. Unfortunately, some of the people we're trying to reach, perhaps our own membership, perhaps members of the state legislature, perhaps Congress, everyone's busy. This might be the first exposure they have to these issues. So what we've developed really through, again, extensive polling and research is a campaign message for the Great Lakes Restoration Campaign. Soren just did, appreciate Soren's presentation on the economics of restoration. Our campaign is essentially, our goal is to pass and fund comprehensive Great Lakes restoration, and that includes, of course, cleaning up and delisting the AOCs. So let's just get right to it. And some of these I'm going to skip pretty quickly based on the conversation we already had, so we can maybe get to some questions, some other points. So here we go. Really quickly, I'm going to go over real briefly some 2005 research, how that was used to inform a message. We did some follow-up research last year, and then how to deliver the message and identifying targets. So let's just get right into it. Creating a message. Keep going. Really quickly, in 2005, we did 8 focus groups in Detroit, Minneapolis, Green Bay, and Cleveland. We did focus groups with men and women, Republicans and Democrats. And again, this is the type of survey that's statistically significant and valid, and we'll tell you what we found. Let's keep cruising. What we found is this: there's a connection to the lakes, but there's some work that needs to be done in terms of awareness. The lakes are healthy but not impervious to harm. And these are sort of attitudes people have. The Great Lakes, we heard it before, they're an economic engine, a recreational destination, a natural wonder. These were values of the lakes that people had going into this with no other information. The vulnerability, the lakes are vulnerable. Let's keep going so we can get to. So here we go. Describing the lakes. As you see, vital to the economy, 67%, almost 66%. Great Lakes are vital to the economy, recreation pulled high, and natural wonder. As you can see, vulnerable, 43%. They're some of the misperceptions that we're constantly faced with is that people think, oh, the lakes are cleaned up. Cuyahoga River's not catching on fire, et cetera, et cetera. A lot, because of invasive species in the zebra mussel, a lot of the lakes are clearer, but they're not necessarily cleaner. So there's some work to be done there. Let's keep going. This all plays into the message. Threats, and this is of particular interest to folks working on AOC groups. Because we are trying to pass a comprehensive legislation that involves wetlands restoration, invasive species, sewage contamination, updating wastewater infrastructure, there are many threats that this comprehensive plan addresses, and in a message you don't have time to tell them everything. I think what we heard earlier, how do we simplify, how do we communicate effectively, and the sort of the golden rule of message development is basically this: you have one chance to instill something in an audience. You can either use that to educate them or to inspire them. I think we heard a lot about facts and credibility. We definitely want to be credible, but in the advocacy work we do, our main goal is to energize and to mobilize. So we are not looking to educate, we're looking to inspire to act. So what are the threats that resonate? Sewage waste and mercury. Sewage is off the charts, and probably for obvious reasons. Once you tell people there's raw sewage going to your lakes, you really don't have to tell them anything else. They go, what? Stop it. The second threat, and this is probably due to a lot of great work being done by folks on the mercury issue, is that mercury, there's a huge awareness about the threat that mercury poses and how it bioaccumulates and can impose a risk, especially to women of childbearing age. So these are the top 2 threats. Now you'll see that AOC is nowhere near this. As a matter of fact, AOC was the absolute last on the list in terms of a threat that people could get their heads around. We'll talk about it in a little bit, and I'll deal with it, but there is a challenge in communicating both the problem and the solution when it comes to the contaminated sediment. And I'll talk about it in a little bit. Let's just keep moving. So here, threats to the lakes. I just went through this. AOC is not even on this, so let's just keep going. There's broad support for state action. This is important for this group. 62% favor basically putting money into restoring the lakes, and 54% strongly. And this is a very strong number. For a lot of political campaigns, if you're, I think we had a representative here, in terms of political campaign, most political campaigns, you start, like if you have a base of about 25% of strong support, that's a pretty good base, and you add, other support, hopefully you're definitely about 50. 60% is very strong. I think it reflects what we learned in the polling is that people have, you don't have to educate them about the importance of the lakes. You don't have to say how wonderful the lakes are. People who live in this area, they know that. I think it was reflected in, they know it's an economic engine, it's vital to the economy and drinking water and quality of life. You just have to remind them of that. So broad support, and I don't think I have a slide because I tried to trim this down, but there's broad support among Republicans, Democrats, Independents. What we're trying to do from our perspective is convince presidential candidates in the election year and other candidates that this is an issue where folks can actually expand their base of support, especially in heated elections. This is sort of a crossover issue that they can hopefully attract some voters, and we're hoping candidates do that and talk about restoration. Oh, there it is. I just mentioned that. Broad support across party lines. Keep moving. Solutions. The elements of a message, and some of you may be familiar with, if you've been through our biodiversity training or the Healing Our Waters training, we've been doing this for about a year now, is that in values-based messaging, you're tapping into values, such as freedom, for example, or democracy. But in this case, it's the Great Lakes. You have a value, you present a threat, hopefully with some urgency. I think a gentleman said, or several folks have mentioned, that without urgency, it sort of dilutes the need to act now. But solutions are equally important, because if you do not provide solutions, even if you've hooked them with the compelling story, the value of this, the threat, and it's urgent, if you don't give them a solution that seems credible or manageable, they'll throw up their hands and say, well, what are we going to do about it? I think you maybe see this playing out. There are other reasons too, but the global warming issue, well, people say, we've heard a lot about how do you localize things. People say, well, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to be a part of the solution to global warming? And that's a real challenge for that campaign. So in this issue, the most popular were waste treatment and ship inspection. I think it's pretty, you tell people we can update, modernize wastewater infrastructure to prevent sewage contamination. They get it. Similarly, with invasive species, the number one avenue that invasive species enter the lakes is through the ballast water discharge of ocean-going vessels. We can treat that water. We can do things. They get it. Again, it connects the problem. It appears easy to implement, and it has an immediate impact. And let's keep going. This is a slide that sort of emphasizes that. Let's just keep moving. This is another. So the message elements. So what do we have for our final message in terms of Great Lakes restoration? We want a mixture of values and threats, right? The Great Lakes is a wonder of the world. What we want to remind people, especially what our polling indicates, is people have sort of forgotten, or maybe they never knew, that the Great Lakes are vulnerable. And what I mentioned just a few seconds ago, urgency. You want to, without urgency, urgency inspires action. Without it, it sort of delays action. And what we learned also is that an argument to counter sort of what people would say, remind people that the problem will only get worse and cost more money. And I'll talk about that a little more in a second. And lastly, again, manageable solutions with immediate payoffs.